I have a lot of really cool friends who do a lot of really cool things. I wanted to make it a goal to sit down with these friends and spend about 15 minutes or so getting to know them better and find out about their past, present, and their future. The result is this show. My name is Grant Baciocco, and this is 15 Minutes With. Felix Pire is an actor, a writer, a producer, a puppeteer, and he basically does everything. Felix Pire, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Grant. I feel the same way about you. I see you do so many different, you have so many varied interests that display themselves on social media. I'm an avid follower.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Let's talk about, you've done everything from movies to stage stuff to puppeting to producing. But let's go back. Where were you born?
I was born in Tampa, Florida, reluctantly in Florida. But I got out of there as soon as I could. I grew up in Miami, though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And how old were you when you were kind of like, ooh, I want to perform? Do you remember that?
Well, I was in love with the Muppets. And so my first performance was having a Kermit the Frog puppet that I would hoist out my window at the apartment building where I lived. And I would charge kids a nickel to watch me kind of lip sync to the Rainbow Connection, and then I pushed my brother into playing Fozzie Bear. So my brother and I were in show business at a very young age,
and making money.
Right? Show business. I am not even kidding about that. So then I think I didn't really think about it until later on when I was growing up. I watched a TV show called Silver Spoons, and Ricky Schroeder was on there. And I was obsessed with that show and Ricky Schroeder, and his mom was like the hot lady from I don't know if you remember her. Her name was Erin something.
Oh, Erin Gray?
Yes.
Erin Gray. Yeah,
yes. She was the hot lady from Buck Rogers.
Yeah.
Beady beady. And it was a great cast. And that was the first time that I was watching a show, and I was really obsessed with how cute Ricky Schroeder was because I was young and gay. And I noticed that everybody laughed when he was performing. And so I thought, oh, he's in front of an audience. And that's the first time that I really ever clued in. But really, I started in drama class out of a mistake. I had actually moved from Houston, Texas, where we lived for a while when I was a teenager, back to Miami. And I had selected like art class, and instead they put me in drama class. But the teacher was really great, and I got to improvise a lot, and I noticed, wait a minute, when I say things, people laugh. And so I kind of stayed. So since junior high, I've been performing.
Yeah. And was anybody in your family creative in any way that inspired you?
Yeah, my dad. My dad is great with illustrations, and he's in the family events and stuff, he was always the center of attention. He's the storyteller and the mimic and stuff like that. And I have a cousin as well who was very performance-y, but nobody did it like professionally.
And in junior high, you're performing, and then I assume that continued through high school. Did that continue? Did you go to college too? Did you perform
I did. Actually, my high school. So I went to regular high school for about a year, and there I took. I did not take the theater class because I was in a special program for kids at Martin Luther King Junior High School, which was all black, and I was like me, and there was one other white kid. And those kids in my class they loved us. So it was a great experience. And so after that, it turned into the New World School of the Arts, which was like a famed like school that opened up in Miami. And so I went there. And then after I graduated there from the theater department, my prom date has 2 Tony Awards, Katie Finneran.
Wow.
After I graduated from there, that had nothing to do with me. But after that, then I went to SMU, Southern Methodist University, which you might not think of as like a big theater school, but it is. Mm-hmm. Kathy Bates graduated from there, and Brian Dennehy and Lauren Graham from the Gilmore Girls. So it was a very, very good theater education, and it was either there or maybe go to New York, but everything's big in Texas, including their scholarships. So they gave me a great scholarship to go there. And during the time that I was there, I met a really important person in my life, which was a producer named Bob Banner, who produced the Carol Burnett Show, Live at the Apollo, all these great Solid Gold, all these great shows from the 1970s. He was my professor in the television and film department. I took several classes outside of there. I had an acting and directing major for the theater, but then with an emphasis in film because that was always my interest. And so I took class with him, and taking his class was really eye-opening. And he also cast me playing Bob Hope in the Bob Hope Theater at the university. And Bob Hope came and saw it, and he saw me, and they asked him, what do you think of this guy? And he said, I think they should slip a straitjacket on him. He said something like that. And they gave me like a whole Saturday Night Live type face thing. And then he met my family. He goes, this isn't a family, it's a football team. I mean, he was old, he was in a wheelchair, but he was sharp as a tack.
Yeah.
And so anyway, pursuant to that, I had to decide move out to New York or LA, and I moved out to LA because during Bob Banner's class, he was a big television producer. We took a television production class from him, and then he also kind of lived here in LA, and he took us to see the Groundlings. And there I saw a gentleman named Patrick Bristow perform in the early 90s, and he was very, very funny. And I thought, no, I have to go to the Groundlings. I have to move to LA, and I did. And then once I got here, I started in a small theater, which was the Bilingual Foundation of the Arts. I traveled around, did some kids' plays, and the literary director of the theater where I did it for, he had written a play called Men on the Verge of a Hispanic Breakdown, a play with 7 different Latino gay guys that were completely different, had different voices.
But it's one performer performing them.
One performer, yes. It was a one-man show.
Yeah.
And I did it here and got great reviews in an evening of different playwrights' works. And eventually, the same playwright had a small play running at the Gay and Lesbian Theater called the Celebration Theater. And it wasn't going well. And he said, would you mind going and doing a monologue? And after the monologue, the artistic director came up to me and said, would you like to do the play? And I said, yeah, of course. And we did the play, and lo and behold, it got great reviews from the LA Times, and Bob Banner came to see it. He invited ICM. They came, and that's what started my film career and television career.
Yeah, well, and we want to talk about that, but was that when you got to go do it off-Broadway? Because is that the show you did off-Broadway?
Yes, it is. Yeah. And no, that was not.
That was later?
That was a little bit later.
Oh, okay.
After I worked on a couple of films, I had done 12 Monkeys. I'd done a little bit of television. I did a film called Dear God. And around that time, like about 2 years after, the director, Joseph Meagle, had moved to New York, and he sold it off-Broadway.
Okay.
So they flew me out there. I tried it. They liked it. And then it ended up running for like 9 months off Broadway. And then off of that, I ended up getting the New York Outer Critics Circle Award for Outstanding Solo Performance. And that was my biggest joy in my acting life, I think.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to let people listening think we're skipping over 12 Monkeys because you mentioned 12 Monkeys.
Yeah.
So we'll jump back a little bit now to the film stuff. Were you just auditioning for films, and that's how 12 Monkeys came about?
Yeah, I just auditioned. They put me on tape, and eventually, I suppose, somewhere along the line, Terry Gilliam saw the tape. He liked it, and they called me in, and I just showed up to the set. It was just that easy, or that difficult. I don't know. It depends how you think about it. At that time, I was a machine. I mean, I was just like... I would just do a million auditions all the time, and ICM had me working, and that was just a big stroke of luck.
And you had several scenes with Brad Pitt.
Yes.
And kind of, I mean, I guess he was known, but he certainly isn't what he is today. But what was that like? What was it like working with him? Did you?
I just remember that he was the nicest superstar I've ever worked with, because he showed up to the set, and first of all, he introduced himself, and he wasn't that famous, but he was famous enough. Like, he's the star of the movie. But he was very gracious, introducing himself, and after that, he asked me, like, what do you want to do in this scene? And that's something that people don't really ask you, Stars don't really ask you. They just kind of do what they do, and you do what you do, but they don't seek to like collaborate a little bit, which he did. And that just made me feel so comfortable, And an interesting little anecdote is that I, of course, told him what I wanted to do, and he went along with that. And I have my scene, I'm telling him, especially in the big scene that I have with him, I'm telling him, this is your lead. I'm complaining about him. I'm the dissenter in the group. So I'm like, this is your leader, this certifiable lunatic who told this psychiatrist, and I go off and on. And at first, I was like this young, aggressive Latino guy. And as I read it as an actor on the page, I thought, I'm going to attack him with these lines because I'm the dissenter. This is the guy who's got to stand up to this guy. So I stood up to him, and that's what we presented to Terry Gilliam, who then came over and said, no. He said, I think that maybe you should perform as if you're having a nervous breakdown, which is ironically the name of my last show.
Right.
You know, and I was like, nervous breakdown, I got this down. And he was like, don't look at Brad. Make it about yourself. Make it as if you're having. So I kept on, and consequently, if you look at the scene, you realize that I did a lot of like looking down at the floor because I didn't want to challenge Brad. And eventually, he grabs me by the scruff and moves me around. So yeah, at first I thought I had a more aggressive approach, and then Terry Gilliam came in and softened it up. And I still say what I say. I'm still the dissenter in the group, but at the same time, I'm not at his level.
Yeah. Well, but what's interesting, I think, about what Brad Pitt did when he came to you and said, what do you want to do in this scene, is that, you know, I think any creative thing, whether it's a movie or television show or a theater thing, it's a group effort. So even though he's, you know, a superstar, he's still like, well, this is a group thing. What we got to work together on this?
You would think that most superstars would know that.
Yeah. So
you would think.
It's
because certain other people that I've seen aren't very interested in that part of the artwork.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying about him, and that's why I'm happy for his success, but I'm not surprised by it because of the way he treated me when I was just a featured actor in the movie.
Yeah.
You know, and I saw him treat everybody so well, and everybody, he was very affable. Like, people liked him.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I could see why he's become a superstar.
Yeah, and it had such a long career.
Yeah,
if everyone wants to work with you,
certainly
they'll want to work with you.
Certainly. And there's some other people that, you know, they're just not as nice and didn't go as far.
Yeah. Well, and I also want to talk briefly about Dear God, because Dear God was a film that I saw in theaters.
Oh, okay.
And I thought it was a fun film. Like, it was one of those. It came out in the 90s, right?
Yeah.
And you know, it was just like a fun comedy film.
Yeah, it was just silly, and it was a lot of fun. And Gary Marshall was an amazing director, and I never met anybody who directed an onomatopoeia. You know, he was like, okay, so you're gonna come out and you do the boom, ba bum. And then boom, and everybody, including Tim Conway, everybody in the room knew exactly what the boom, ba bum and the boom was, and we just do it, you know. And there was not a lot of like talk about, you know, like inside the actor's studio. Hello, let's talk about your objective and your, you know, there's not a lot of talk of that. And I've noticed generally in movie making, there's not a lot of talk of that. It's just you just go and you do it.
You're right.
You know.
Yeah.
And then they ask you for an adjustment, and you do it, and then that's what goes forward.
Yeah. Well, let's talk as well, because you mentioned you started out doing puppets, and you have your own puppet project.
Yeah.
And I would love to talk about how that came about and how you developed that.
Yeah, well, that was like around 2007, and I decided I wanted to direct, and there was like a new thing that just came out called YouTube, and you could put your stuff up on there, and I thought, I want to direct, but I don't want to put my face on it, and I don't want to use actors because they're not dependable. So there's another stuff called like green screen and blue screen that I can figure out. And so maybe I can do a lot of my different characters on a blue screen and green screen at home where I have full control. I will work it all on my computer because I do know how to edit. And so I thought, let me just do that as an experiment to see how it goes. And little by little, I also like thought of in 2007 of like a Latino Muppet show. I was interested in doing something along the lines of a Latino Muppet show, but like for a more adult audience, like for a Comedy Central audience. So that would be able that way I could make all the Latino jokes I wanted, and this is something that you don't hear a lot about, you know, on television today, and everybody's looking for that Latino show that nobody wants to do. So, you know, here I was going to experiment with all that, and I still am. I mean, to this day, I'm over like 100 webisodes, and you know, I have my little thing. And for me, it's a labor of love. And now I'm talking to some people, and we're going to try to add a band to it, and try to actually get it shot in the studio where I'm working right now. So there's hope that it'll turn into a half-hour thing for VOD. That's what I'm that's what I'm aiming for.
Yeah, well, I mean, the characters are a lot of fun, and
I have a talking marijuana plant. I have like stuff that I have a telenovela couple, and they're like modern day Punch and Judy, and they fight. I have a naked homeless guy. I have things that are like a little bit out there that are also just topics that won't be dealt with by the Muppets. I feel like that's like just open ground for me to deal with that subject matter. And not have to worry that I'm overlapping in any way.
Well, and it also seems to me that especially Latin and Hispanic audiences are more open to, if I'm flipping the channels and I see something on Univision, it's like, whoa, this is a little bit racier or whatever, than what would be on normal television. So it just seems like it'd be a great market for that.
Oh, absolutely. However, I don't think that Latino people have been educated about puppetry like the American eye has. And what I mean by that is that we are very, very harsh judges of puppetry and take for granted that the people who we watch doing it on television are such geniuses because they come from Jim Henson. That when you see something in Spanish and you understand the Spanish language, you realize that most of the stuff that goes for puppetry with them, with the exception maybe of Sesame Street in Spanish, is pretty bad.
Yeah.
So Latinos aren't very cultured with puppets. They haven't seen a lot of puppets outside of Sesame Street, actually. They've seen the Muppets, but they're always dubbed, right. Which is a different experience than watching the puppeteer move that mouth plate.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about your writing and do you, because I know you create a lot of things and you always seem to, when I talk to you, have a different project or something that you're working on. Mm-hmm. Do you have a set writing schedule? Like, I'm going to write, for 3 hours today or something like that? Or,
No, what I do is a little different. I decide, or I go on whims that I need to finish X or Y project because right now X or Y thing is happening that will allow me to do X or Y with it. So if for example, there, I don't know, and I do this a lot, a contest will cross my path. It's like a writing contest for comedies, and I'm writing a comedy, and it's 3 months from now, I'll say, okay, my goal is to submit to this contest, and I'll make that my deadline. And so I'll finish things like that. Or if somebody approaches me and says, hey, let's do this thing, and so I'll write something real quick. But no, I don't have a set deadline where I sit and I write. And I've tried to do that, and it doesn't work for me, and I hate that. But I want to be able to do that, but no, I kind of am one of those people, sadly, I'm very George R.R. Martin. I can only write when I'm inspired.
Yeah.
And I try to put myself in the place where I will be inspired. And I was telling you before we started recording here that I'm just a person who, like yourself, I feel like I need to have this constant outgoing output of creative projects, and it's not that anybody holds a gun to my head. Nobody makes me do it. It's just I feel pent up if I don't do it, and it nags me. I just finished doing some stupid little webisode series called Jedi Jabberwocky with one of my puppets, and that had been nagging me. It was bothering me that I hadn't shot it yet.
Yeah.
And I got this idea a few months ago, and it was just nagging at me. And until I just get it off of me by doing it, then I don't feel right. And I just follow my gut, and my gut kind of tells me, do this, do that, and I kind of move around that way.
Yeah, and it was funny because you said when we were talking about this earlier that it's sort of you're I don't know if Jesus compels me or whatever. Yeah. And I've always said, because somebody asked me oh, are you religious? And I was well, I grew up religious and I don't now, but it's I almost feel me creating things and putting things out, going through that process, almost like going to church.
For sure, it's a spiritual process. Yeah. I mean, it's a process. And as a matter of fact, the great writer who wrote a bunch of HBO films and stuff like that, who wrote NYPD Blue, David Milch, mm-hmm. He identifies people avoiding the creative work. He really pinpoints what that is, and he basically says that writing is a place where we have to put ourselves in this one very ambivalent place, this very scary place where either inspiration's going to come or you're going to stare at that blank page. And then just the fear of that makes us justify other things to do. So he calls that justified resentment. And so whenever I'm avoiding doing something, I know, and he says, and when you do that, it adds to your anxiety.
Yeah.
So if you have anxiety because you haven't written, then justified resentment, which is like, I got to go do that laundry because before I get to writing this, because that's going to actually make you more mad, like in the crazy sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's a really kind of interesting concept that kind of gets my wheels going and turning every once in a while. I'm like, am I justifying the fact that I resent that I don't know what's going to happen here? But if it fails, who cares? You know, try again. I mean, for us, most of the stuff that we do, I do a lot of stuff on spec, just speculation. And if it works, it works. And if it doesn't, I just put it away, and maybe later on it'll show up. That's another thing about creativity. A lot of these things that are like our outputs, I've written several screenplays that are just sitting there waiting for the right contest to come along or the right person to say, hey, do you have a screenplay? Guess what? I have like 10 of them.
Yeah.
You know, and I've just amassed them. And I hope that I get better with each one.
Yeah.
You know, and I think the contests sometimes are just BS, but at the same time, it gives me a deadline, and I'm like, what the hell? I don't buy lottery tickets.
Right. Well,
you know?
Yeah.
I don't buy lottery tickets, so this is how I play the world, you know.
There you go.
And absolutely, writing is catharsis, you know, and there couldn't be anything holier than catharsis, because ritual, religion, and theater are inextricably intertwined. We do the same rituals to prepare for an evening of theater. The lights go down, we sit down, we dress up a certain way. Everything happens very ritualized. The same thing happens when we go to like a religious event. Same thing happens when we sit and we meditate and for the gods to bring us a great idea or to execute an idea that we're doing. I mean, as actors, we know that there's the mystical side of things. That's a known fact. I mean, just go to the most famous play ever, and what is it? Hamlet, written by William Shakespeare. What is it? What's central to it? Guess what? A ghost comes to Hamlet and says, guess what? You need to get revenge. Yeah. So that's central to our theater lore. So yeah, I have a very spiritual connection to all aspects of creativity.
Yeah. Who are some creative people that people may not know about who they should go check out? Like that are kind of inspiring you and influencing you?
Creating people today.
Yeah.
Creative people today.
Or no, it could be in the past as well.
Well,
Either
I mean,
one.
Here's something that I think, you know, I started in solo performance. So for me, that's a ritual, and that's a big cathartic thing to do a whole 1.5 hour and a half in front of an audience. And that's enlightening. And I think spiritually, it's like being a priest in front of a group of people that you're going to guide through storytelling for the next hour and a half through different characters or whatever narrative you've got. Well, one of the people who did this to the point of genius that's oftentimes overlooked because now she has a career where she's in your face all the time is Whoopi Goldberg. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've ever seen her first show.
Sure. Yeah.
Her first show, that Whoopi Goldberg show that she did that was directed by Mike Nichols, is a genius thing where every single one of those characters just leads you to laugh, cry. I mean, sometimes you're laughing and then you feel guilty for having laughed, which is a great feeling to have as an audience member. You know that feeling where you've been duped and fooled, but in a good way?
Yeah.
And she does that over and over for the sake of, you know, illustrating great social concepts. And I wish she were presenting works as smart as those, but boy, that's a work of art. And so that's always inspired me. Lily Tomlin, who I once met, also inspires me greatly, particularly her mime, which I approached her about, and I said, did you study with Marcel Marceau? How did you prepare that? Was it directed by Jane Wagner, who wrote the play? She said, no, I just made up what I thought would go along with the story. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
So, and this is like something that I thought was so refined. It looked like it was Marcel Marceau inspired, something like, she just went, that's talent, you know, that's just a natural gift, you know. And so I'm inspired by both of those ladies, actually. They both, Whoopi in an emotional way, Lily Tomlin in a technical way, and then, of course, Robin Williams.
Yeah.
Robin Williams is my third wheel on this thing. Yeah. He's the male in the center of those two ladies, and he would have liked it that way. And just his energy and his variety of characters, I've always been fascinated by.
Yeah. Well, Felix, if people want to go find your stuff, where can they go online to check you out?
Well, my show is ongoing. It's called Titeres.tv. Los Titeres means the puppets in Spanish. It's Titeres. So Titeres.tv is the actual name of the web address. Or they can look me up on FelixPire.com.
Okay. Well, Felix, thank you so much for talking to me today. I appreciate it.
Hey, it's a great pleasure.
Felix Pire is an actor, puppeteer, and creator, and my guest today on 15 Minutes With. Find out more about what Felix is up to by visiting his website at www.felixpire.com. That's www.felixpire.com. Much thanks to Felix for being on the show today. 15 Minutes With on the GrantCast is a production of Saturday Morning Media and is made possible in part by the Saturday Morning Media Patreon patrons who've gone to www.patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media and set up a monthly donation for as little as $1 a month. Huge thanks to Shay Stewart, Merle Lafferty, Jeff Peterson, Dale Gadania, Stephen Staver, Jackie Klimo, Melissa Crawford, Chuck, Matthew Wayne Selznick, Dave Slusher of the Evil Genius Chronicles, Mike Coughlin, Dorothy Baciocco, John D., Kathy Crawford, Brian Greer, Carrie Whitney, Chuck Tomasi, Chris Foster, Stephen Ing, Clinton of ComedyForecast.com, Vicky DeVries, and Mike Wabshall. If you'd like to support this show and the other fun content from Saturday Morning Media, become a patron. Head on over to www.patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media today and set up your donation. That's www.patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media, all one word. You can also support the show by telling a friend or leaving us a review on iTunes. If you have feedback for the show, you can send it directly to me at grant@throwingtoasters.com or get in touch via Twitter. My username is ToasterBoy. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back in another week. The GrantCast is copyright 2016 Saturday Morning Media, Grant Baciocco, executive producer. All rights reserved. www.SaturdayMorningMedia.com.